Okay, I want to start doing a series on PA system basics, live sound, things like that. Now, you guys probably know I am not a live sound expert, but I do understand signal processing. I'm a recording engineer, so I approach this stuff from a recording engineer's perspective. But a lot of these is just your basics that seems to be the same questions over and over. So I have a live recording here from Hawaiian Brian's, a local band called the Travelers. And this has your basic, you don't usually get too much goodies on the live sound side for recording unless you have a lot of channels. This particular board's only 16 channels, but I've got an overhead mic, kick mic, snare mic, and some toms. We just play a raw mix real quick. This not much going on here.
Dedicated to all the Hawaiian girls out there, yo.
Now, if you're doing like a big rock band or a metal mix or something, the guitar amps are going to be so loud that they're going to be bleeding into all the mics. When you're doing recording in the studio, your big problem with rejection is going to be like cymbals bleeding into your tom mics, hi-hat bleeding into your snare mic, and the other way around too, like your snares getting way too much in your cymbals and stuff. For your shelled drums, for your kick, snare, toms, noise gates are often the thing to use. And all we're trying to do is make it so that only the kick, like let's say, or only the snare is in the snare track. So you could just, if there's too much bleed, if there's other instruments getting into the mic that you're turning up those other instruments as well. And that probably won't sound so good, and it's probably going to be counter to what you're trying to do. So on this first episode, I want to talk about noise gates. So basically, you're going to have the signal muted until the instrument you want is played, and then it shuts it back off again. I'm trying to probably explain this bad. Let me play some chunk here. Okay, so hopefully you hear that in that kick track, there's other instruments going on too. Let me go to a vocal track. That's then I think we're really going to hear. So this is just supposed to be the singer. And I'll play it for a little while with the singer, but I'm going to show you what else is getting into this vocal mic when we're talking about bleed.
Ooh, baby.
That's just the vocal mic. That's just the singer. That's all you're supposed to hear in there is the singer. But listen, you're hearing...
Ooh, baby.
You're hearing the singer, drums, and all the other instruments, horns and guitars and everything else. Here it is. Let me take off this volume envelope. Sorry, 1 second. So in this case, I'm hearing the other singer, hearing drums, hearing the keyboard. That's just supposed to be the vocal mic. So that's an example of bleed, okay? So let's go back to the kick track. Kick is usually going to be easiest because if the mic's inside the kick drum, it's kind of isolated already. It's got a little shield around it, keeping it from making trouble. Let me see if I can find a picture real quick. You get some looking images real quick. Okay. Oh, this is great. Okay, so this is from home studio recording. Let's see if this makes sense to you guys. So this red line is the output level. So let's say this blue line is it's the background noise, it's the bleed, and this right here is this louder part is gonna be your kick drum. Like let's say this is when the kick hits. And if you look at the output, what we want is nothing coming out when it's not the kick drum. And then when the kick drum comes out, when you hit the kick drum, all of a sudden you have some output. And then here's some of your basic parameters. Threshold. Threshold tells you the level that the gate is going to open. If the sound pressure, if the signal level is under the threshold, the gate's not going to open. Oh yeah, if you guys know, I need a bigger mouse for doing this kind of stuff. A bigger mouse pointer, if you guys know how to do that. I still don't know how to do that. When the signal goes over the threshold, that's when the gate opens. Now, you can't actually open it immediately. There's physics involved, right? You can't. It would take time travel to open the gate immediately. Also, you actually want to open it ahead of time for a couple reasons. Maybe we'll get into that. But in live sound, you can't. On a recording, you can, because you're looking at it after the fact. You can do all the look ahead you want. You actually could do look ahead live, but you're going to get latency, which is not something you really want. And it won't necessarily work the way you want it anyway. So, but anyway, so the time it takes between when the signal gets over the threshold and the noise gate is fully open is called the attack time. So if you have a long attack, you might cut off the transients, the click of the kick. You might want to do that. You might want to soften the hits up that way. There's also the time it takes to shut the noise gate back off after the threshold, after it goes below the threshold. And this is super important because if it's too long, you often hear it in tom-toms or snares. You're going to hear the doom and then the cymbal. And there's going to be this weird fake, not fake, but very artificial seeming cymbal sound because it's bleeding through your tom mic. You might be EQing your tom, like tons of EQ, tons of high end, tons of highs, and when that cymbal gets heard, man, it is nasty. I have a software company where we actually made something to address that, but not too many people are using it live. It can only be used live in certain circumstances. So, it's tricky. You gotta figure out how that release is going to work. Some gates have also a hold control, and that's a minimum time that this thing's going to stay open after the threshold is crossed. Some gates treat it by specifying the hold after the threshold is crossed up. Some do it after the threshold is crossed down. But anyway, it's going to be a minimum time that that gate's going to be held open. And so that's all academic stuff. I'm going to grab a very basic, well, not super basic because I was very proud of this gate. But this has pretty much everything you're normally going to see. So this is Regate inside Reaper. And like I say, even though this is a recording, this is from a live recording. So we're going to have all the parameters that we're used to having here. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to loop a little section here with some gates. Here, let's get some. Okay, so here's a section with really clean. There's not too much junk going on in the background. So I'm going to loop this real quick. Let's just loop these two for now. Okay, so you probably hear, you still hear the audience there. But if you look, this kick drum as a signal, man, it is loud. So this is a kick right here. This is, if you don't know, this is what a kick drum looks like, okay? Really hard, spiky transient, and then it's going to fade out. Now it's fading out into the crowd noise here. So let's just look at, let's just go to one of these actually. So I'm going to loop this. Okay, I got a bunch of people here. Hope we're okay. Let me just check on this real quick. Make sure they're not looking for somebody. Sorry, I always got something going on here, but that's all right. All right, if you're still with me. So let's look at these regular parameters. I'm gonna set this thing to open immediately, no hold, release right away. It's gonna be horrible. We're gonna look at the main controls here. So threshold, this can be your threshold. your attack, and release. That's the main things. There's also, I don't know if I showed this here. There's also a range control, like how much will it duck. A lot of us tend to use this thing fully open, fully closed. But you can make it so that there's always going to be a little bit of bleed if you want. There's reasons for that. I don't tend to do that in recording, but you still, there's still reasons for that. It might sound a little bit more natural. Okay. So our regular controls, here's our threshold. So this is, again, what level is it going to open at? Our attack, how long does it take to open? Our release, how long does it take to close after the threshold goes back down? And that's really our main controls that we're going to work with at first. That's what you're going to see on the most basic of noise gates, if you're lucky. Sometimes they won't even have that. But I'm going to loop this again. Let me know how the volume is of my voice versus the signal. Okay, so this meter, and sometimes you won't get good meters, but this is good meters on this thing. This meter is telling you what the signal level is. Okay, you probably won't have an RMS size here. We're not going to mess with that right now. But here you go. So right now this gate's open, right? Because the signal's above the threshold. If I turn the threshold all the way up, now the gate's cut off, okay? So just as this super basic setting, I'm going to pull this threshold down until the gate opens. Hear that little click? Now, as repulsive as that is, that little click is often what you want. And that's all you want. Because you can use the other controls to deal with this. It's not going to work because some kicks are going to be, you know, some instances are going to be louder than others. And you're going to have to find a happy medium. This is all about compromise, and it's terrible. But let me show you why that click is fine. So I'm gonna mess with these attack and release controls here. Or just the release, actually. Okay, now see that click? That click is caused because it's opening too fast. But we want it to open fast. So here, again, this is like I just said, we're going to need some compromises. I'm going to slow down the attack. Watch what happens. All right, hold on one second. Yeah.
I didn't want him pressing on your board, so he's not coming through the PA.
Oh, who's not? Who's not? All right, sorry about that. Actually, a PA-related question here. In the other room, the board wasn't assigned to the left-right bus, so it wasn't making any signal. There you go. All right, so you see, if I turn down that attack, or if I slow down the attack, that click goes away, right? That's pretty good. Now, you see the release time? If all you have is a release and not a hold, you're going to do another compromise. So let's take a look at how long this kick is. So I'm going to change, I don't know if you can see this down here. I'm going to change this to minutes and seconds. Okay, so I'm going to measure this kick drum. And this is like your basic kick drum. So here's kind of the start of it. The gate's really not going to open till here, but let's just look at how long a kick drum is. So this is the main body of the kick. You might get some lows going on for a while. And what this is showing is 166 milliseconds. So 200 milliseconds is usually plenty. However, if we look at this again, the release is this ramp out time. It might be cutting off some of the stuff you want in order to get out in time. So it's not ideal, but let me play this again. Okay, I mean, it's not bad. Sounds like a kick. Might be a little too clicky. You might want it a little bit mellower for a reggae band. You could actually, again, you can start shaping the tone of things with this dynamics by taking out some of the attack. Right? I don't really like doing it that way. I'd rather do it with an EQ. But here we go. This is okay. I mean, for metal, I would just let it click. Right? It's a little too poofy. Okay, so that's your basic controls. That's your attack and your release. However, if you have a hold control, I can tell this thing to stay open for the part that I really care about, which is probably going to be about 50 milliseconds, and then make the release come out where I want. Let's say I do a hold for 200 and release is 0. Now, I'll show you what the problem with that is. I don't know if you're hearing this. It's going boom, shh, shh. You're hearing that cymbals or whatever the background noise is. Let me play this. All right, so we don't really want that. We just want the part of the kick that we care about. Let's just say it's this, how long is this part? 91 milliseconds, okay? Let's just say that I want to hold it for 85 milliseconds. How about that? All right, now, still going to be a little bit of a problem, and I'll show you what it is. It's kind of crunching off, right? Now let's dial in a little bit of release, like maybe 50 milliseconds. Now, it almost sounds like we have a sampled kick drum, right? There's a little bit of hiss at the end, but let's just say that if I wanted to EQ this thing like crazy, I'm pretty much okay now. Let's try it. Now I'm putting a pile of high end in here. You wouldn't probably do this on reggae. Well, I would, but don't listen to me for that kind of stuff. Let me mess with the gate parameters and watch why we need that gate. Actually, let's turn off the gate. Watch what happens. Now all of a sudden we got this nasty hiss. If I take out the hold and just do release, watch what happens. Almost sounds like Space Monkeys in the background, right? But if we got the release and attack right, I can EQ this stuff in and not worry about swirling birdies or any of that other kind of weird noise. Right? Maybe let's make this a little bit more appropriate for reggae. Maybe you would do a shelf and actually take some highs out. And maybe they just want some thump. And we'll get rid of some low mids here. We want that to be a band. But you know, it was metal. Yeah. But that's pretty good gated. Yeah, I mean it's clean, right? Now, this probably isn't going to work. Now, I'm going to play this and we're going to see why that little click that I really liked isn't really going to work for the rest of the song. So let me play this for a while. See that? These kicks didn't get hit. Let me turn off the effects real quick. So there we had a bunch of hits that we didn't get. See? So we're missing a whole bunch of them. So the thing to do about that is to turn down the threshold, let more of the signal through. However, by turning down the threshold, we are changing the timing. And people don't kind of realize this, but if I turn down this threshold, then I'm getting into the ramp earlier or later. so it's a compromise. So let's loop this section so that we hear all these, and you can turn down the threshold till it works. So right now it's a -5. We go to -6. Still missing some. And you hear that little pfft. Sometimes you're going to get those and there's no real way around it, but let's go down. Let's go down quite a bit. Let's go to the -10. So now we're getting some of that hiss we don't want. So what do we do about it? Turn down the hold. It sounds kind of gross, right? These two just sound gross. Yeah, there's some other controls that you see on here that you may not know what they do. You won't always have these, and I'm not sure that the kick is the thing to show this on, but we're going to do the low pass and high pass in a second, frequency keying. But let's just say that this is okay. Let's put this in context. So this kick sounds too short now, right? It's kind of short. But if I put it in context with the whole song, let me turn down the crowd. Now it's not so bad, right? Again, listening to stuff in solo isn't always the best thing because you're not going to be in solo when it plays. You're going to hear the whole mix. So you got to hear stuff in context too. So I think we're okay on this kick drum. So I'm going to go to snare. Snare is going to have trouble with cymbals and hi-hats and stuff. Maybe not so much on this reggae band, but let's take a look at what we got here. So I haven't talked about compression yet, but by turning down the peaks when we're using the compressor, we're going to make the background that much louder. That's where you really get into trouble. That's where we need these gates to work. And the compression actually works against the ramp of the noise gate in certain ways, which kind of sucks, but we're going to deal with it. So let's see what we got here. We're going to set up another noise gate. Oops, that's an EQ. Well, I'll leave that on there for now. Okay, so this type of music often has these stick clicks. That's gonna make some trouble that we don't want right now. So let me find something else. Luckily on this band, there's not that much cymbal trouble. Usually you get a lot of crash trouble. Let me get rid of this envelope here. Sorry. So it's usually a hi-hats to make the most trouble for snare. Okay, so that's pretty good. So let's get this section right here. Snare, again, let's measure this. We can measure this ourselves. Here's the shape of a snare drum. Let's take a look and measure the time here. If you want my Reaper preferences, I can give them to you. There's a reason that it works this way. So this is like 150, maybe 200 milliseconds. So really like 120, really. in recording, we set these gate times to be a lot longer usually, but live you might want them a lot shorter. So let's just say 140 is going to be our time, basically what we want here. Let's look at. Now you look at the difference in the hit. Look how loud that snare hit is, how quiet that one is, how super quiet that one is. So again, there's gonna be a compromise, and it's gonna be a tricky compromise, and it's gonna be frustrating and upsetting for at least for me. So let's get this set here. So attack at 0, release at 0, threshold all the way up, and we're gonna pull this down until it works. There's a flam that got missed right there. There we go. Okay, I want to show you something. I want you to be aware of this. I don't know. People don't say this enough. Pay attention to the fact that the louder the snare is, the higher the amplitude is when it plays, the longer the signal that comes out is. We're at 0 attack and 0 release, okay? So this thing's going to open and shut as fast as it can. And yet, some of these are longer than others. That's because it spends more time in the curve. See that? So see how this one was kind of as short as one of the quiet ones? Let's look at it. I bet you the spike is going to be a lot spikier. And there you go. That's the part that opened it right there, not that. All right. So now we're going to set the hold and release. You might want a 0 attack on here. You might want the snare to click. That snare clicking is going to give you a lot more attack. So I'm basically going to set the release or the hold for the body of the snare. And if I make it too long, then I end up with cymbals, right? Now I'm pretty happy with that. Trying to find a case to show you when you would use this frequency conscious stuff. But let's EQ up the snare a little bit and expose some problems. So if I made this hold much longer, or this release much longer, I'm just going to make the cymbal super loud and weird sounding on the snare. Okay, let's listen to this in context. Okay, so something else I want to show, and this is gonna be hard to do because these tracks actually have pretty good isolation. But I want to show you something here, and that's on a better noise gate, you're gonna have this feature. And this is gonna be frequency conscious keying. So sometimes you want to think of a dynamic device like a compressor or a gate that it has an audio signal path and it has a detector signal path. The detector is what the device listens to tell when to open and when to close. So you could actually have, and let me show you here. I'll show you a side chain example. Here's the bass guitar. I'm going to turn on the bass guitar and the kick drum, okay? Oops. Okay, now let's say I put a noise gate on the bass guitar, and this you probably wouldn't ever do this. But I'm going to feed the detector the kick drum so that when the kick drum hits, it's going to open up the bass. Otherwise, the bass is going to be closed. Let's see. Let me do this real quick. Now, this is kind of a weird concept, but I'll show you. 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to tell the detector to listen instead of to the main audio path, which is what we were doing this whole time. I'm going to tell it to listen to the auxiliary inputs, which is going to be coming from the kick drum. And so this thing, it's not going to, the bass isn't going to play unless the kick's playing. So let me turn the threshold all the way down. So that's normal. Now, I'm going to turn this threshold up, and unless the kick's playing, you're not going to hear any bass. And let me put some hold on so you can actually hear the bass. Okay. So that's an example of how the detector works. You're feeding it a different signal, but it could be part of the same signal. And I'm going to show you that. So on this snare drum, let's go back to the snare. I'm going to tell the detector input to still listen to the main inputs, but we're going to do something to them. And so I'm going to put this preview filter. So this is just going to listen to what the detector's listening to, okay? Preview filter output. So this is the signal the detector's listening to determine this threshold and the timing, okay? Now, it's a snare drum. I don't need that much highs, do I? You want to look at this on a spectrogram? Let's look at what this snare looks like. This meter's a little bit too slow for this, but let's look on here. Actually, go back here. Let me do a little bit faster. Okay. Why is this so slow? Sorry. How do I boost this? Anyway, sorry. I'm gonna do this a different way. So most of the snare's energy is down here around 400 hertz, right? So we don't need these highs. So let's get rid of super high highs. We want to reject anything that we don't want to open the gate. We want to tell the gate to open on the actual instrument fundamental or at least sound that has to do with the instrument rather than, you don't want your kick drum opening your snare mic. You don't want your cymbals opening your tom mics, you know, that kind of thing. So we definitely don't want the super high. So let's start filtering that out. See how I've gotten rid of the cymbals? So that's the normal signal, but so we're going to get rid of a lot of that. And we don't need the super low lows because the snare doesn't even make that. So chances are the bass guitar is going to hold it open or the kick drum's going to open it up. So let's get rid of that. In fact, let's look on Re-EQ's frequency meter here. So see when the snare hits, the lowest thing is like down here, like 250 or so. So you can get rid of that. You know, there is a problem. If you looked at the shape of waveforms, I'll show you this real quick so before this gets confusing. The slower the waveform, the longer it's going to take to reach that peak. So you can't, if you really low pass things a lot, if you're high passing is fine, but if you're really low passing to, like, say you think, oh man, the kick hits at 60 hertz, so I'm going to have it open at 60 hertz. It may take so long to open that gate that you may lose all your attack, which is okay in a recording situation because you can use look ahead. But in live, you might not. You want to be really careful about doing that. But I can high pass it. So let's take a listen. So now I'm going to get out of the filter input. Now we're just going to have the threshold listen to this, and we should be able to have a much cleaner signal to trigger from. Okay, so let's put this in context. Okay, so the real pain, at least from my perspective, is toms. The cymbals are going to want to bleed into these toms, and it's just awful, and it just sucks. So let's start looking at everything here. In this case, we had the tom mic so close that we're not hearing it that bad, but like in this picture here, you can see this black. So this, I'm using spectral peaks, which is going to say that this dark color up here is really highs. This blue is a lot lower. So here's the part we want. This blue part. We don't want this black part. However, if I were to just like, let's manually gate this by splitting up this track. Let me show you that it may not sound the way you want. So let me clean this up. So it sounds good, but you still have riding on it. So we want to shut that so it sounds a little bit more natural. So let's play this here. Okay, so again, let's listen to preview filter. I'm going to take out these highs. But the high part of the tom is important to us, you know, because that's what's going to open it the best. Now you think with the tom so low, you're going to want to you know, have a low frequency signal open it, but that's probably going to make trouble. So I'm going to turn that up a little bit, even though that's way past the fundamental of this tom, I think. Let me get out of here. Again, so snare can make it really hard to open, to keep. Snare might try and open the tom when it shouldn't. Cymbals might try and open the tom when it shouldn't, but you know, hopefully we're taking care of that part with this low pass filter. So you still hear the cymbal in there, and there's not always that much you can do, but in context it might be okay. So I'm gonna take a look. These toms are actually pretty long, so let's look at what this whole body is. 569 milliseconds. That's a lot, right? So we're gonna hold this sucker for, let's say, 300 milliseconds. We're gonna fade out a little bit slower at 100 milliseconds. Okay, so you're hearing here, it's going boom, tss, boom. Tss. That's this guy while it's closing. So we might want to close quicker than that. Maybe we're going to hold it shorter. This is the compromise you have to make with traditional gates. I don't want to turn this into an advertisement for my plugin company, but we actually have a way around this. I'll show it to you in a second. But so no more psst, but let's see what we can do here. Okay, so now in context. But it's still a little bit goofy, right? You hear how short that is? Make that a little bit longer. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'll show you what we did, and there's kind of ways you could mock this up on certain consoles. We did, so we made a multi-band gate here. So we're gonna treat each signal or each part of the signal different. So I'm gonna have the highs close kind of quick, and I'm gonna have oh shoot, I gotta enter a. Sorry, give me 2 seconds here. Oh man, this is what I get. I leave these things unregistered so I can test our registration process. Give me 1 second. Now there's other ways around this. I used to mock this up in Reaper, so. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay. Let's put my email in. And where's multi-band gate? Multi-band gate. There we go. Send out is going slow today. Okay, so we're gonna separate this into 3 different bands: the highs, lows, and mids. So let me go to one of these ones that's really making trouble here. Turn the threshold all the way down. So you see, if I shut the gate normally, it's going to cut off the lows and the highs at the same time. But really, the highs, I only need them to open for the tiniest little second. So let me get to that. So I'm just soloing the highs right now. So I can close this pretty fast. Turn up the threshold. So I only want this to open for the shortest amount of time here. Okay, but I want the lows to last for quite a while, so let's go back to the lows. And I'm going to shut off the mids for now. So we go to the lows. So this is how a regular gate, we would just we'd shut them off at the same time, right? So it'd sound like this. Like we were just noticing. So in this case, I'm going to have the lows last a long time. So I'm not getting the cymbal problem, but I'm still letting the lows ring. So that's a way around it. That's our multi-band noise gate. Could even make them longer and more natural. So hopefully that's the basics of gates. You can come back here and watch this. If you got any questions, leave them in the comment section and I'll try and deal with it. I can do a much deeper dive into this, but that's the basics of noise gates and some of the caveats about using